Welcome back to Neat Talk. In this segment, I'm going to be discussing Chapter 10 of my book, and the name of that chapter is The Invisible Student. Does that intrigue you? Well, it was very intriguing to me when I learned that there was such a thing as an invisible student. There should never be an invisible student, but let me kind of explain to you what that represents and what my research found. The invisible student is oftentimes labeled as a child who's performing at the 2.0 to the 2.9 grade point average. They're not failing, but they're not doing very well. They're not doing exceptionally well, I should say. They're not taking honors courses. They're not getting into trouble with their discipline issues. And they're not involved in extracurricular activities. Now, when I say they, of course, I don't mean every child. That is just like the research that I found showed that many of those kids were not being involved in extracurricular activities, and they were not performing as well as some of their counterparts or their peers. So what I did when I found out that there was such a thing as an invisible student, I was like, no, not under my direction. I initially learned of this when I was a dean because I was in charge of issuing discipline to kids who had gotten into trouble. And a lot of those kids who were labeled as invisible, they weren't coming into the dean's office, but neither did I see them receiving awards at the awards ceremony. And so I got with a few people, we talked it out. And when I became principal, I formed a team and we worked on a program just for those students because we had the Cambridge kids who were the high performing students, we had the honor kids who were doing very well academically, and then we had the invisible students who were mostly labeled as basic students. They weren't taking honors courses and they weren't performing exceptionally high. We came up with the program and the teachers were very interested in ensuring that these kids got that extra layers of support. We were trying along the way to involve them and encourage them to be involved in extracurricular activities. Some did, some didn't. But another really critical part of this was we greeted these kids by name, most of them by their first names, and I try to do it as often as possible, beginning of the school day, during lunch. And in my book, I share a story about a young lady. Initially, I did not know that she struggled with the invisible student because I didn't know exactly what it was. But later she told me, she shared her story with me. So in middle school, she felt invisible because, as I just explained earlier, her teachers seldom called on her. She didn't feel they knew her name or knew anything about her personally. She wasn't involved in any activities. And when she got to high school, it continued. She had friends or associates who were being recognized, and she felt invisible. No one was noticing her. She wasn't receiving any awards, and it was sad to her. So when I learned about the invisible student, I tracked a few kids, I followed them, I encouraged them, not only myself, but my team and I. My team and I worked diligently to ensure that these kids received some of the attention that they so greatly deserved. So what I say to you today is, if you know a child who's hovering at a 2.0 to a 2.9 and they're not involved, and if you have a conversation with them and they say, well, I don't think my teachers really know anything about me, they're not interested in me, I don't really know a lot of kids at school, any of those things, let that be a cue to you that those kids need a little bit more support. And I call that more support an extra layer of support. And today I wore my polka dot dress just to make sure to signify that we don't want any students being invisible. And polka dots, of course, you can see these. They shine in your eyes. And I want these kids to be bright, and I want them to be recognized by everyone who they encounter each day while they're at school. So let's work together. So reach out to a child, a neighbor's child, a friend's child, if you feel that they may be invisible, and share the content that I'm sharing with you. Encourage that child to be involved. And if nothing else, just talk with that child and let them know that you care. I hope you have enjoyed today's segment, and I would love if you would click on subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Instagram at Anitha Jones, my Facebook, which is Anitha Jones Author, and of course I have a website, which is anithajones.com. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today, and don't forget, There are no more invisible students. I challenge each and every one of you. So until next time, take care.